Okay. Seems we have a little bit to discuss here. Again. You can't gatekeep someone else's transness. Yes, I can. The fact that Rose of Dawn is too stupid to do so correctly, or any of the rest of you are too stupid to do so correctly, does not mean that I am not capable of seeing you don't fit the story. You fit the story of the GNC, the ones that have hated us for decades on end because we get called trans females. It's strange how for decades the she-male GNC has hated being called a she-male and have resented the transsexual for being calling a trans female. Starting to get the picture. Basically, they didn't like the Aerosmith song, Dude Looks Like a Lady. Looks like a piece with arms, but it's got a little package down in the panties there that just doesn't fit the equation of seeing a female body, and then she pulls down the panties and, oh my God, it's a he. That's a GNC. The transsexual female is driven towards the operation, which, let's mix them all together and say that there's no such thing as a male and female brain. That was coming from a history major, by the way, who says there's no such thing as a male and female brain. They're also a raving, stark mad feminist, but, you know, hey, if it fits the wrong, that's not how it's done. And like old Dog Fingers Tommy Tooter says, you can't gatekeep someone's trans. It's all wrong and outdated scientific opinion. But I'm a life scientist. I've got a degree in marine biology. Okay, and yet you still insist on calling peer-reviewed medical science as an outdated scientific opinion. That sounds more like something an evangelist would do. Okay, whatever. Circular arguments and trying to push an agenda always comes with, you cannot gatekeep someone else's. Yes, you can. There's been decade upon decades upon decades upon decades of study into transsexualism which says this. GNCs they have watched and they are totally different, and they made this so for decades, and then all of a sudden you come in and decide that you can change it because you don't like the definition. No, you can't. You cannot change that. Blaire White will never be a transsexual female. Tommy Tooter will never be a transsexual female. Jonathan Yaniv will never be a transsexual female. Rose of Dawn has gotten the operation. They say they knew as a kid, kind of, but they still don't realize who is and who isn't trans. Jazz Jennings is a transsexual female who's too young to understand what went on previous to her life. Therefore, she has no idea about the she-males always constantly pushing at us, hating us, resenting us for being called trans females and actually being called a female, and no one knowing until she got a divorce, and then she'd tell her ex that she was actually born male. Totally you're crazy. But you're one of my sisters from that time. Of course, you weren't here in the U.S., so you didn't put up with the Paul McHugh thing, which they also don't get. And they also don't realize that Christine Jorgensen did not get hormones and surgery over here in the U.S. either. It's all done in Europe. I'm not exactly sure where Tula's operation was, but it was only either in Europe or Asia, because the U.S., there was no clinics or surgeons able to work in the United States from the late 70s, early 80s, on up till the 2000s started, and then they started seeing, oh wait, Paul McHugh, he was wrong. There's so much information coming out from Europe about something else. Wait a minute. So doctors saw this little kid that was being interviewed on by Walters, and they took it and, hey, let's go ahead and use the Dutch protocol now before the peer review over here in the U.S. Otherwise, Jazz Jennings would be a big, furry, hairy little male screaming, I'm not a boy, I'm not a boy, I'm not a boy, please stop, please give me something to kill myself with. And that would be the end of Jazz's life. Very disappointed. Large like her brothers. Furry like her brothers. With black hair, that would mean really black, stubbly hair all over her face and body everywhere. That would have been her fate if it hadn't been for Goering and Schwab and 42 dead transsexual females that had their brains cut up into little slices. So when you go around saying all this stuff and you really don't know, what you're doing is causing more problems. Now, you've got a she-male that's in their 20s that has totally made a mockery out of being trans. They attack transsexual women that are older. They attack transsexual kids. And YouTube allows it because they've got a giant fan base that is clapping every time Mr. Blaire opens his mouth. And they defend him at all costs because that's exactly what an indoctrinated idiot does. A fool is one who relatively believes without any proof or any kind. Why is it that Blaire cannot pull up the medical science and show it to you? Why is it that Blaire cannot tell you what gender dysphoria is, how it starts, how bad it gets as you progress? No. They just repeat things that they hear coming out of the bigot world. And you eat it up like mad. And that's a deficit to the transsexual females. It is something that is harming our ability to get medical transition. Then you have the worst of them. You have Jonathan Yaniv, who has not taken any hormones, just dresses up in female clothes and plays with himself, thinking about getting a bunch of 12-year-olds topless in a pool without their parents around. Sound suspicious to you? It is. But then again, most of the people that hang around Blaire do not really see the worst of it. Yeah, if there's a problem. You'll be around a lot longer than the worst of the problems. We just put a new tape out about how we're making up fictitious lies about him, about an innocent encounter that happened in his past, where the girl went from 13 to 14 to 15, almost 16, in a matter of years, and it's where he actually physically, sexually molested her. Okay, and then it went from making her sing with his tongue and fingers to my hands never went south. Okay, how is it that you were supposedly orally manipulating her with your mouth and using your fingers and digitally penetrating her? And she was supposedly 13 and then 14 and then, she was almost 16. And it would be normal around anywhere else in the world. No, Thomas, it would not. Except for if you're in the Middle East with the people that would, they can't get close enough to pick you up and throw you off a building, but they would more than likely shoot you from a distance. Because that's what the Middle East would do to someone like you. Especially seeing as you want to keep Mr. Wingway and pounce around calling yourself a woman, they would definitely kill you. Blaire White, oh, they'd like her till they pull the panties off, and then they'd kill them as well. Jazz, no, they just raped the hell out of her. Regardless of the fact that she started off as a boy, she now has female genitalia and therefore is fair game. There's a big difference between you, Thomas and Blaire, from the likes of Corey Mason and Jazz Jennings. When I at one time was young and had a lot of fun, but couldn't have any sex. So the closest I ever came was bathing underneath the hose of a stripper. There wasn't any sexual contact really, but it was one hell of a show. And we got our hair washed and all that kind of stuff, and he wrecked his tractor into a tree. It was not something that was sensual as much as it was a dance. You could call it a dance. Anyways, it's kind of like the fact that, you know, her boss at the strip club wanted to hire me. Especially when I walked in the strip club and it's like, oh wow, look at that. When is she coming on stage? But then again, I was in my early 30s, so I looked pretty damn good. But like I said, Thomas, you go out there and you find this stonebreaker OHHC, and you absolutely are the rudest, nastiest, filly-mouthed, nasty male, and then you drag him on there and you sound like a male. You act like a male, and what do you think they're going to come across as? Or you think they're going to have you come across as? You came across as a male, screaming and yelling, and you, I mean, really, you need to sit down and stop. Think about it for a minute. You really aren't trans. You actually put something about Tom must be in hiding. Tommy should be on the surface. I feel safer as a trans woman than a 60s rowdy rabble-rouser. I feel sly knowing I'm going to get away with more with boobs than I have trying anything else. Money doesn't rule the world. Tits, ass, pussy, and a fuck me hairstyle and paint job rules the world. Do you really think that sounds like a female? Thomas, you're not a woman. You're not a trans female, and you all think they ever said I was a trans female. I said I'm a trans feminine male. You're not feminine in any kind of way. You took hormones so you can lurch around in bathrooms and look at little girls, just like Yannick. That's what you did. That's all you are. You're a child predator that took hormones thinking that you'll get safety out of being transitioned when you don't. You actually get less safety. But you wouldn't know that, would you? But let's face it, you walk around like a man, you act like a man, and even when you're trying to dress like a female, you still look like a man with boobs. You're the most hideous monster that's ever walked this earth. They haven't seen it yet, and you're not really in the mass appeal yet, but let's hope that Chris Hansen gets a hold of it and says, oh, wow. Honestly, at least he tried to rape a child. This one actually did, and you did. And don't say you didn't, Tommy, because you did. Got me, Thomas? No more lying. You're not trans. People that find out about your nastiness don't want you around because of their kids. And I'm an advocate for trans kids. You need to stay away from kids, period. You're a disease. Just fouling up our world. And you need to back off. Now you go leave Stonebreaker OHHC alone. Stop with the kids. Stay away from children and dogs. You really need to, because you're a very perverted, foul, nasty human being, and eating out of a trash can is not healthy, nor is smoking.